New this morning, this ceasefire between India and Pakistan, it is holding. There were celebrations in the streets of Pakistan once the ceasefire was announced. It was around 5 p.m. in India and Pakistan. The ceasefire ended their 4 days of direct military strikes. President Trump announced the truce and took credit for it. But there have been conflicting claims about the degree to which the U.S. was involved. We are covering this from all angles for you. We have CNN's Nick Robertson in Islamabad, Pakistan, and we have Matthew Chance in New Delhi. Nick, we're starting with you, and today a day of celebration there.
Yeah, a day of Thanksgiving. That's what the country is calling it. To give gratitude to Allah, to thank the troops, to get that sense of national unity. And I think it is fair to say that Pakistanis feel not only relieved, because let's not forget here, this was a very intense war at certain moments. India striking deeper and more extensively into Pakistan than they have done in 50 years. The countries have fought several wars previously over issues in Kashmir. Every time Pakistan loses, and recently it had really felt isolated from the international community, that India was sort of looming over them, and you get a sense of this now from what we're hearing from politicians, and the thanks that they're giving to President Trump. President Trump in his post today said that he will help Pakistan and India to deal with their issues over Kashmir. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs today released a statement saying that they were grateful for President Trump and his team's involvement in the negotiations, that they looked forward to being able to find that support going forward. And I think it's also worth noting here that it's not just the United States that officials here have been thanking. It has been Turkey, it has been the UAE, it's been Saudi Arabia. The Greeks called up the other day. China, a massive and stalwart ally whose military made a huge difference in the aerial dogfights of the fighter jets and the missiles supplied to Pakistan. Military lessons learned by both sides in this 4-day conflict. But I think where Pakistan emerges today recognizes that it has huge challenges still in dealing with India going forward, particularly on the issue of Kashmir, particularly on the issue of the water, that the treaty that India says it's going to continue to abrogate and not supply vital water to Pakistan. And I think on that very intriguing and interesting question of the role that the United States played in, they saw something troubling. They piled in the diplomatic effort, both with India and Pakistan, working with both countries to resolve this and bring a ceasefire that teetered even to the last minute. Pakistan thanks the United States for their engagement. India says, no, this was all done unilaterally between India and Pakistan. Historically, India does not want to internationalize the issue of Kashmir and other issues as well between the two countries. Not clear why, but the quick analysis might be that India fears having other international players involved perhaps tips the balance against them. But certainly Pakistan feels that the balance has tipped towards them in terms of international support after what's happened over the past 4 days.
All right, Nick Robertson for us there in Islamabad. That takes us right now to Matthew Chance, CNN's chief global affairs correspondent. Matthew, and this is the right segue into you, because there was so much gratitude from the Pakistani prime minister to the president, the U.S. administration. India says not only did the U.S. not play a major role here, no one will come in from outside of these two countries to negotiate Kashmir.
Well, that's right. There's definitely been a distinct, different emphasis here in India in terms of the role the United States played. And there are a couple of reasons for that. One of them, as Nick was just saying, is that here in India there's a long-standing refusal to participate in or allow international mediation when it comes to the dispute over Kashmir. It's been a long-running dispute. It's been going on for many decades, really for nearly 78 years, in fact, since the early days of the foundation of the state of India. And from the outset, India has categorically refused, or at least in recent years, India has categorically refused to engage in negotiations. That's one of the reasons why it's been so reluctant to acknowledge there was a US broker brokering aspect of this latest ceasefire. There's also, nationalistic reasons as well. India has, a very strong nationalistic sort of body of support, and it didn't want to project the idea, I don't think, that this peace was in some way imposed upon it from an outside power. The message, the narrative that the Indian government very much wants to put across to its own people is that this was something that was its initiative, something that it agreed to do on its own terms. And I think that's why there's a real difference in the narratives coming out of India and Pakistan right now on why this ceasefire and how this ceasefire took shape.
Matthew Chance for us there in New Delhi. Matthew, thank you. Let's dig deeper now into the India-Pakistan ceasefire, also the efforts to get to a 30-day ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine with Bobby Ghosh. She's the former editor of the Hindustan Times and a geopolitics analyst. Bobby, good morning to you.
Morning, Victor.
So let's start here with India and Pakistan. This ceasefire is holding. For the first few hours, there were accusations from each that the other had violated, but, we're several hours into it now. But you call this a new, more dangerous era. Why?
Well, if you look at how these spasms of violence between these two countries have gone in the past, Victor, there's a terrorist attack on India. India responds by striking terrorist targets in Pakistan. Pakistan then does some sort of a symbolic attack on India. And then the two sides call it quits. And each side then claims that it has achieved its results. What's different this time is that the conflict has gone on for several days, and the kinds of targets that each side has picked the bar has been raised. India has now struck Pakistani military targets, not just terrorist targets, and sometimes quite deep into Pakistani territory, into important places, Pakistani military bases, in and around the cities of Lahore, Rawalpindi, quite close, we are told, to the headquarters of Pakistan's nuclear command. Pakistan likewise has also struck at Indian military targets, brought down some Indian military jets. The exact numbers have not yet been confirmed. But clearly the bar on both sides have been raised, and the messaging from the governments on each side towards their own people the bar there has been raised, that if the enemy attacks us, this is how far we're willing to go. So the problem with any long-running conflict like the Indian-Pakistani conflict is that every time there is a spasm of violence and the bar is raised, it means that the next time there is this sort of provocation and sort of toing and froing of attacks, you have to go up to the last bar and then go a step forward. That's the political reality of it. That's what comes off this kind of messaging. The expectations that have been set with the population on both sides have been raised, and that's the real danger. And as long as the underlying conflict is not addressed, there's always a risk that we will come back to this place again.
So you say this is a more dangerous era, and that's for every subsequent intersection. But at this intersection, do you believe that they have retreated from the type of escalation that moved, say, Vice President Vance from saying, this is fundamentally not our business, to attempting to get involved and mediate some pause?
Well, they certainly have pulled back, and it was expected that they would. There was expectations that once each side had, if you were paying close attention to the propaganda messaging in both countries, there was already this language that we have taught them a lesson. Those are trigger words. When one side says that, it means that we've done enough for now. So I think that mediation or no mediation. Mediation doesn't work if the two parties are not willing to use the off-ramp that has been provided. And I think both parties had already signaled that they were ready for that step. And then a lot of other international players got involved. The American president is trying to claim much of the credit for himself. The Indians are saying the Americans had no role. The Pakistanis are saying there were 36 countries, 36 countries that were involved in the diplomatic effort. I think for the people who are caught in the middle of this war, for ordinary Kashmiris, Indians and Pakistanis, they're just relieved that the ceasefire seems to be taking hold. They don't really care what the mediation process was like, as long as the guns go silent.